Even though a legendary queen once said, "We all got crowns," you need to calm down. Nobody can cease comparing Olivia Rodrigo to Taylor Swift, and today's video, I want to unpack what I think to be is kind of true and maybe not so true about this alleged beef that has been brewing between the two of them over a number of years, and the discourse that has only been exacerbated by the release of Guts and Swifties and Livies both going absolutely insane. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. My name is Zach. I am the Swiftologist, and I make thoughtful weekly videos about pop culture. I just released my Guts reaction, and I was so pleasantly surprised and blown away by the artistic growth and development that we've seen from Olivia Rodrigo. Really, she is cementing herself as an artist who's building a legacy, and I truly think she's one to watch as a longtime scholar, fan, and lover of pop music. So I made a video about a year ago kind of talking about why I think there is some sort of like latent beef between Olivia and Taylor, and also discussing the endless comparisons that were going on at that time. Since then, I have definitely had like a growth in my opinion and my perspective on Olivia Rodrigo as an artist, and the main takeaway I think that I said and shared in that video was that I was looking for her to grow as an artist outside of her association with Taylor Swift, and for hopefully those comparisons to die down as she got further into creating her own legacy and leaving her own mark on the music industry. And even though she has created this legacy and is currently leaving an indelible mark on pop music, I think that there are a couple of snags that have happened along the way. And I know a lot of people are very quick to either insist that Taylor has some sort of extremely malicious, vindictive vendetta against Olivia, or on the flip side, they're also extremely quick to insist that they are best friends and there's nothing wrong, and Taylor would never, ever try and silence or suppress a new artist because she's, you know, the most benevolent, queen, generous person in the world. I disagree with both of those characterizations, and as always, I try and come at these subjects with empathy, and I try to look at each side of the story and come to a conclusion that feels logical and rational to me. So if that sounds interesting to you, before we get into it, half of you that watch my videos on a regular basis are not subscribed, and that is a war crime. So I'm going to need you to remedy that by subscribing now and liking this video and supporting this messy boots on the ground journalism that I am so dedicated and committed to doing for you. So I think there are a few reasons why this conversation is kind of not going to die down anytime soon, and both parties definitely have some sort of culpability in whatever it is that is brewing between them. And to be clear off the top, I guess I should suggest that yes, I do think that there is some sort of tension between the two of them, maybe not even necessarily between the two of them, but between their teams. I think that this is definitely a business motivated disruption or disconnect, and that's why it seems so difficult to understand, and why, you know, fans on Twitter who only care about loving and streaming and endlessly, ruthlessly defending their fave no matter what the circumstances may be, are not quite grasping the kind of like bigger and more circumstantial elements of this. It's not just about someone being jealous or someone copying someone. It's a little bit more complex than that. So here are a couple of reasons why I think that the two of them get compared a lot. Olivia herself cited Taylor as an influence over and over again in the lead up to her debut album. This was, I don't think she realized, a big mistake that she made, and I will talk about that later in this video. Olivia and Taylor also had similarly meteoric entrances into the public domain, and they both have this very specific parasocial relationship with fans and this ability to connect to young girls and to move them emotionally in a way that is pretty rare for other artists. And I'm very sure that Olivia is not a passing fad and a trend, though some Swifties really are trying to insist that she is. This is another piece of this that I just don't understand, is Swifties refusing to let any other artist have a spotlight or a shine. You know, we all got crowns, as I mentioned. You need to calm down. There's room for everybody. So kind of building off of that parasocial relationship that they've both been very skilled and excellent at creating, both of them, despite writing about teenage girl things, found that their music resonated widely beyond their target audience and was very critically and commercially successful as well. A lot of the times when you're making music that is connecting very deeply with your young fan base, it maybe doesn't penetrate or resonate more largely in the music community, in the business, in the publishing, in the entertainment side of it, in the real like tastemaker circles, and both Taylor and Olivia were able to do that very quickly into their careers. It can take some artists a long time to build a legacy that is respectable enough to be considered as something that is of artistic value, and I think that it was very clear from their humble beginnings of Olivia and Taylor that they were both here for a long time, and they had something unique and special to contribute to the world. And I guess the most obvious reason for why they're compared a lot is because they're both very emotive, confessional songwriters, and the conversation has turned so nasty on the subject, and mainly coming from the Swifties, surprise, surprise, being toxic, per usual, who can't seem to stand the idea that Olivia might share some of the traits and qualities that people love about Taylor. And, you know, again, I'm going to reiterate for like the third time in this video, we all got crowns. It's definitely delusional to discredit Olivia's artistry in support of Taylor, but I also think that it is another brand of delusion to vehemently insist that they are all good and there's no beef and no problem whatsoever. There may not be a beef, but there is certainly a tension and a hostility, mostly coming from Taylor and towards Olivia, that in my opinion is worth noting and picking up on. And I can see both sides of this rift. I really have tried to understand where each person is coming from in this scenario, and I want to try and move this conversation to a space that allows both queens to keep their crowns and to encourage the rest of the internet to calm down. So how did we get to this point where there is some sort of a cold war going on between the two of them? Well, I'll return to my point of why these girlies are compared to unpack this relationship dynamic a little bit more. Olivia citing Taylor as an influence for Sour. This was the cardinal sin. Before Olivia even said that Taylor was her idol, critics noted the Swiftian influence in her debut single, Driver's License, and that song does a very specific Taylor Swift thing in that it imbues a personal experience with a universal resonance that is relatable to anyone who hears it, regardless of whether you relate to the specific lyricism inside of it. And I think that's why it had such a huge and viral moment right in the middle of a global health crisis when we were all feeling very disconnected. It was fortuitous, but also that song was going to smash no matter when it came out because it's great. In this song, Olivia charges the mundane with emotion, getting her driver's license, mostly just to drive past your ex's house in the middle of the night and ruminate on your breakup. The comparison here between that song and many other of Taylor Swift's songs is immediately very clear. Conversations around inspiration and copying have become so unbelievably mindless and brain dead. I saw a take that was comparing one of Olivia's songs from Guts to Start All Over by Miley Cyrus, a record that came out in 2007, comparing those two songs and kind of implying or inferring that Olivia had been copying that song, or as if it was even a thought in her head when she was creating the song she was accused of plagiarizing. And I think it's very sad that we've come to this point where there is absolutely no nuance in our conversations about art. Art is a continuum. It is something that, references itself over and over again. No artist ever creates in a vacuum, and you could technically say that every song written by any artist in the world was copied from somewhere else. So I think that those accusations are really silly, and this is something that has plagued Olivia from the beginning of her career, and also something that Taylor has kind of directly had a hand in creating. To a certain extent, it's kind of impossible not to be compared to Taylor Swift as a young female pop songwriter because you are inevitably going to be inspired by her anyway. Nothing that you create exists in a vacuum. If you love someone else's art, glimmers of it will appear in your own art. And let's not forget that Taylor Swift didn't invent diaristic or emotional or confessional songwriting. Her work definitely bears the mark of the people that inspired her songwriting as well, from The Chicks to Joni Mitchell. The main difference here is that Taylor came up at a very specific time and did something new in a different genre. She brought a more country sensibility style of storytelling to a younger pop country curious audience. She was a real crossover artist in that sense. She didn't start out as a pop girl. So that was a barrier certainly that she broke down and a path that she trailblazed, allowing young girls to emote very effectively and intricately with seriousness and gravitas. To me, it makes sense that a whole new generation of songwriters would be very much inspired by this shift that she created and feel it deeply within themselves and also feel empowered to create their own moments of truth through song. It's that sensation of, if I write songs, truthful ones about the experiences that I'm having, then maybe someone out there will relate to me, or maybe I can feel heard, and perhaps my thoughts, my feelings, my experiences do matter, and they're not silly, and they're not consequential, and they don't deserve to be brushed aside. Olivia has only spoken very highly of Taylor doing this very specific trailblazing, and has certainly cited her sources wherever she had gone with Sour. I think Olivia was very naive, and she has said this in interviews subsequently, that she didn't really understand how the music business worked, and learning that lesson the hard way was rather difficult for her. She was, 18 years old, and she didn't understand that the thing that she loved doing so much was also a business enterprise. I think Taylor had that understanding that what she was doing was a business opportunity from the very beginning of her career, given how involved her parents were in it and how much they invested in helping her become successful. I don't know that Olivia had that same kind of very headstrong, head down, racehorse mentality where she had a goal in mind and was going towards it. It does seem a lot like the success and the magnitude of Sour took her by surprise. But it was a shock to her to realize that the music business was not America's next top best friend. Talking about Taylor and referencing her wouldn't really have been an issue per se. Plenty of other artists shower Taylor with praise all the time and kind of glob off of her spotlight a little bit. It's the comparison that was starting to be done over and over by the media, both because the material is kind of very directly inspired by Taylor and also because Olivia was bringing her up all the time. It was this comparison, I think, that has driven a wedge of sorts between the artists, or at least between their camps. Not every female singer-songwriter gets compared favorably to Taylor Swift. Sometimes they get, referred to as like a Taylor Swift knockoff or trying to do something that Taylor was doing. But there were several reviews that kind of directly mentioned that Olivia was a scholar of the Taylor Swift School of Songwriting and that she was taking what she had learned from being a fan of Taylor Swift and creating something very beautiful and unique with it. At the end of the day, not only are Taylor and Olivia not friends, they're also not colleagues. They are competitors. Of course, we all got crowns, etc., but they have a huge demographic overlap and they exist in the same realm. And Taylor, at the end of the day, as we all know, or you should know if you've been following and paying attention for a long time, she's a businesswoman. She's not stupid. She knows that this is a business and that Olivia is not her friend, but we'll get more into that later. I think it's worth looking at their interactions to kind of see where the Cold War began or where the fissure started, because that kind of, I think, is the only evidence that we have. And everything that I'm saying in this video is, of course, my opinion and my interpretation of the facts that are available to me, using my best guess, using the context that I have as a scholar of Taylor Swift for many years and my common knowledge and my best practices. These are the conclusions that I'm coming to. If you don't agree with them, that's totally fine. But if you are disrespectful in the comment section, or if you leave a comment without watching the entire video and I can tell that you did that, it's not going to end well for you. I will just delete your comment or block you. So keep it cute. So their first interaction that I think was documented on the internet was when Olivia did a cover of Cruel Summer and Taylor posted it and said that it was amazing. After that, when Driver's License came out, it transported Olivia obviously to superstardom overnight, and Taylor sent her a letter of congratulations when it went #1, and she also commented on her Instagram that Olivia posted when she was third underneath 2 of the bonus tracks from Evermore on the iTunes charts, saying, "That's my baby and I'm real proud." That's kind of a direct acknowledgement of Olivia being the heir to the crown. And when I say the heir, I think people think that I am trying to infer that Olivia can replace Taylor. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that Olivia can occupy the space that Taylor is currently occupying as well, whether it's now or in the future. She has a very similar appeal and a similar ability to connect with people in a very specific way. I'm not suggesting that there be a coup and that we kick the queen out of the castle. What I'm suggesting is perhaps there can be 2 thrones. So it seems to be kind of all good at the beginning of the Sour campaign, but then in almost every single interview leading up to the release of the record, Olivia is gushing about Taylor Swift. And obviously, anything that you write about Taylor Swift from a media perspective is going to get a lot of clicks and it's going to get a lot of hits. And so if I were a journalist interviewing Olivia, this new artist that maybe didn't have as much traction as an established artist, I would ask her a question about Taylor Swift so that I could get more clicks for my website. A lot of people like to infer that Olivia was intentionally comparing herself to Taylor Swift in order to kind of boost herself on the come up. But I think that being compared to Taylor Swift has been a net negative for Olivia overall, and I certainly don't think she was doing it with the intent of trying to make her album be more successful. I think she was just an excited young girl who was suddenly able to be in the same realm as her biggest idol and was excited about that. Unfortunately, because this is a business, that was not the smartest thing to do. She certainly was not thinking about how this comparison could be perceived behind the scenes, especially from someone who is competitive, the apex predator of the landscape, right? If the apex predator is seeing, an up and coming little new thing coming onto the scene that might start eating her food, she's going to start taking notes. So a couple months later, in March of 2021, Taylor sent Olivia a heartfelt letter and gave her the ring that she wrote during the writing of Red. This was an incredibly sincere gesture, and it is a little bit befuddling why only a couple of months later there was a sudden switch up, but I think it becomes clear why there was, and that was because Olivia started having kind of unprecedented success. When Deja Vu came out in April and the brain-dead internet, who doesn't know the difference between copying and inspiration, got a hold of it and they started comparing it to Cruel Summer, it really doesn't, by the way. I think that's one of the most preposterous claims against Olivia of all. I suppose you can kind of hear the misery business influence all over Good For You, but the Cruel Summer Deja Vu comparison really just doesn't make sense to me, other than the fact that Olivia is kind of shouting in the bridge of the song. It certainly doesn't warrant Taylor or Jack or St. Vincent having a writing credit on that song. They had nothing to do with the creation of it. But obviously, Deja Vu really pops off, and I think everybody was surprised to see the caliber and the quality of this second single. It was pretty much the second solo song we'd ever heard from Olivia Rodrigo, and it was a certified banger as well. Taylor and Olivia then meet at the Brits in 2021. Jumping forward a little bit, something else I think Olivia maybe shouldn't have done was include the song One Step Forward, Three Steps Back. First of all, it's not that good of a song. Second of all, it directly interpolates New Year's Day as a sample. And I feel like, when you're going through being compared all the time and having writing credits kind of tacked on where maybe they don't deserve to be, the smart thing to do would probably have been to leave that song off the album. But again, I think Olivia was naive and young and didn't really understand what she was doing. Olivia and her co-writer definitely lost millions of dollars in royalties when Taylor and Jack were given credits for that song retroactively in July of 2021. So that was 2 or 3 months later after the fact. Dan, her producer, has kind of made some sort of vague allusions to the way in which that credit taking happened. He kind of indirectly suggested that once something becomes successful, suddenly people want a piece of it. opposite. Before, it's clap, clap, how cute, what a sweet little girl writing her sweet little songs. Then when the song is a huge success, when the song is a viral moment, then suddenly it's, I want a piece of that. I want to show you that you're not going to get away without citing your references if I believe you have used me as a reference. What I don't really understand is the obvious behind the scenes push that happened between the labels, and obviously Taylor manages her entire career. She doesn't have a management team. She has like a kind of a group of advisors, I suppose, that help her make decisions. So any kind of like outreach or communication that is done from Taylor's camp to someone else's camp is coming directly from Taylor herself, because there is no person that is like above her that's like making decisions on her behalf. And I don't understand why Taylor either pursued getting these credits or accepted them in the first place. If in fact she was just given these credits out of the goodness of her heart and Olivia really felt like she wanted to share these royalties with Taylor, I think a cool thing to do maybe would have been to comment on it publicly and be like, I don't really understand why I needed to share credits on this, but I appreciate Olivia citing her references and I think it's a really great song. This is effectively what Hayley Williams from Paramore did when she was given credits for Good For You. In fact, she didn't even want to be credited on that song, and she didn't see that there was a direct influence, so much so that she deserved to receive royalties from it. And I think that Taylor could have handled it in a very similar way. But on purpose, she didn't do that. And I think that this is very telling. A lot of the time with Taylor Swift, when you're studying her career and you're studying the moves that she's made over time, you have to read between the lines and look more at what is not said rather than what is said. At the end of the day, accepting those writing credits just really struck me as taking candy from a baby. What's the point? You don't need a couple million more dollars. You already have everything that you could ever want from the music industry. There is no real need to punch down in that sense. And that's really how I interpreted this turn of events, especially seeing as how Taylor has literally not referenced Olivia Rodrigo since. Something else, and kind of like an act of passive aggression. Taylor is the queen of passive aggression, whether you want to believe it or not. Check out The Evolution of a Snake and listen to our back catalog to see how these kind of things happen and mature and develop over time. Taylor has big upped a lot of the rising female pop stars who I guess would theoretically be competitors to Olivia, although none of them have the commercial penetration that she does. She has gone as far as to basically infer or claim that Gracie Abrams is her direct heir, which is just ludicrous. I mean, I think, you know, even if you're a Gracie stan and you really like her, you can understand that the level of songwriting that she does is not anywhere near what Taylor Swift has been able to accomplish. And it's also not as widely resonant as Taylor Swift's. The music is just not that popular. It doesn't like stream that much. She hasn't gone that far. She's kind of like a niche artist at this point, even with the Eras Tour boost that she had. Olivia, however, has already kind of set herself apart as the, I would say, the star of the Gen Z pop girls. She is the one that people are talking about, that people are interested in, that people who are not terminally online and are not, you know, between the ages of 15 and 17, she has a wider appeal than just kind of being like a TikTok star. Put yourself in Taylor's shoes for a second. You are seeing a competitor in your market come out with a product that is really good. It's not necessarily better than your product, but it's something that will maybe, you know, sell a couple more units than your other competitor products that you don't have to worry about because they don't even touch your profit margins. Why would you co-sign that product? Why would you enhance or endorse that product by saying that you think that it's good or attaching your name to it? It's not good business for Taylor to, you know, big up Olivia Rodrigo the way that she's doing it with Gracie Abrams. She's only doing it with Gracie Abrams because even with the Midas touch of Taylor Swift, she's not going to reach the levels of success that Olivia Rodrigo has already enjoyed without her help, basically. Something that I thought was really disappointing, and why I think that Taylor actually should come out and say something about this, or just say something kind of nice or flattering. It will be interesting to see how the two of them interact or don't at the VMAs. I think Taylor is going this year. Olivia is performing. Something that was really disappointing about the rollout for Guts, Olivia's second album, was that she literally couldn't escape the conversation about Taylor Swift. She was asked if Vampire was about Taylor. She definitely denies that it is, but she isn't very emphatic about doing so. And all of her answers to these questions that are being asked about Taylor Swift are very careful. This is something that you will notice if you read them. And a lot of people will say she's still trying to glob onto Taylor Swift. She's trying to suggest there's a problem. I don't think people understand how journalism works. Even if you say, if you're a publicist and you send a journalist a list of questions they're not allowed to ask a celebrity, they're going to ask the questions anyway, unless it's a televised interview and it's not a serious publication. When you're being interviewed by The Guardian or Rolling Stone or The New York Times, you cannot just sit there and say, I refuse to answer this question. You can say no comment. You can talk around it, which is what Olivia did, but you cannot be like, I will not answer. answer. And if you don't answer, that's actually worse for you than just giving kind of like a vague or an ambivalent answer, which is what Olivia actually did. She wasn't very emphatic about denying that Vampire was about Taylor, and she also was kind of, non-committal about whether she was going to the Eras tour. She said that she hadn't because she was going to Europe. She didn't clarify. I'd say the Olivia of yesteryear in 2021, before she got smacked by Taylor Swift indirectly behind the scenes, would have been like, I can't wait to go. She would have talked about what song she wanted to see. She would have been dressed up in the friendship bracelets. It's very telling that she did not attend the Eras tour and that she maybe is not planning to. And throughout this promotional cycle, the flattery and citing of Taylor as an influence was very much missing from her discussions of the creative process. She cites other artists like Avril Lavigne and Alanis Morissette and Fiona Apple and Courtney Love, and you can hear them all over the record, but she pointedly does not mention Taylor. And a lot of people have misinterpreted this interview that she did with Interview Magazine and Phoebe Bridgers as her commenting on the Eras tour as the biggest tour of all time. First of all, even if that were true, that she was referencing the Eras tour, I don't think that's compelling enough evidence to say that there's absolutely nothing wrong between the two of them. And also, I'm pretty sure she was just referring to the fact that Phoebe has been on tour with Taylor and Boy Genius and by herself for multiple. Before you come at me with that, read it again. I want to talk a little bit about why I think Taylor is not pleased with Olivia in general. So first of all, as I mentioned, it's not good business practice to endorse a competitor's product. And at the end of the day, Taylor is a businesswoman. What she cares most about is being successful and being the apex predator in the music industry. I also think that Taylor, like many other people in this world, is a little bit insecure. She has told us as much. And I think that the Miss Americana documentary is a very revealing glimpse at what I think the psychological motivations are behind not really trying to give Olivia a leg up. She said in the Miss Americana documentary that she was very resigned to turning 30 and no longer being a dominant pop culture force. And the way that she was articulating herself made it seem like she was really trying to convince herself that she was okay with taking a more backseat role and that she had, enjoyed her time in the limelight and was ready to give it up for a quiet life. But we saw a swift reversal from that as soon as she broke up with the heirloom turkey. When it was Jover, then suddenly it was, I want to be the next big thing all over again. The level of success that she reached from Folklore onwards, the way that virality leaned into helping her become extremely relevant again, and the whole Midnight's rollout and the fervor and the Taylor mania over the Eras tour has really, I think, shown to her and to the rest of the world that she is far from, fading into the background or, going into a quiet sleeper mode of her career. I think that she is newly enriched, activated, and engaged and ready to keep being the biggest thing on planet Earth for a very long time to come. And part of being the biggest thing is making sure that other things don't come up and threaten your success. So, a lot of people will say that Taylor has anti-competitive business practices as a musician by, gaming charts by having hundreds of remixes and getting her fans to buy stuff and maybe inaccurately reflecting the popularity or the impact of a song just by manipulating the devotion and commitment of your audience. These are all interesting things to think about as Taylor's career continues to reach a new stratosphere. But I think ultimately she is not ready to give up the crown, and that is 50% of the reason why she is keeping Olivia at arm's length. So that's just my interpretation of it. Of course, I'm using the information that I have to draw a conclusion. If you disagree, that's totally fine. I also think that nobody likes to feel like they're being copied. And if Taylor does in fact feel like she's being copied, then I'm sure she finds it very irritating that she is constantly being compared to someone that she feels does not present as completely original. Again, I actually don't know how Taylor feels about Olivia, so that's just conjecture. And finally, I think that Taylor also has anxiety about, an ingenue taking the lessons and the hardships that she's learned and the very difficult things she's had to go through, like losing control of her master recordings, getting to bypass those things and get to success without having to go through what Taylor went through. And I think we hear that very clearly in the anxieties on Nothing New. Someday I'm going to meet this girl, this ingenue in a fever dream. She'll say that she got the map from me to be as successful as where she is, and I will cry myself to sleep. That song was written a long time ago, but I feel like there is an element of it that still rings true to this day. I'm going to talk a little bit about Olivia's perspective and the kind of impossible situation she's been put in. She can't mention Taylor without being accused of trying to use her to succeed, but also she can't mention her without people over-reading into what she's saying and trying to project a beef onto her that maybe is not as serious as some would like it to believe. She also can't even really be a fan of Taylor anymore because of the two things that I just mentioned. So she's in a really difficult position where damned if she do, she's damned if she don't. The endless speculation about what songs on Guts are about Taylor Swift is honestly insulting to Olivia Rodrigo and to any songwriter, and I think that we really need to stop playing this stupid, boring, reductive, this song is about this specific thing and we need to dissect it and it's definitely about this and your interpretation of it is wrong if you don't agree. Songs, I like to think, are composite sketches. They are not always or rarely ever traditionally about one specific thing. They are a bunch of different fragments and thoughts that exist in this kind of semi-fictional world. Like, you create a song and it exists in a different realm to, reality. Taylor is an artist that does this all the time. Look at a song like Question. It is genuinely perplexing. You could not say that that was about one specific thing, person, or instance. Sometimes it's more clear than others what exactly those reference points are, but I would say more often than not, when you're creating art as an artist, you're not thinking, ooh, I'm going to get her. I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that. When you are making good, emotionally resonant and true music, you're just being moved by what you're feeling at that moment and creating a piece of art out of it. It's very reductive to say that this song is about this thing or that thing or the other thing. It diminishes what I think is the artistic process of creating a song. Guts is a short album. It doesn't have a lot of space to say all the things that it does say, and it is extremely interesting and a very kind of compelling document of what it's like to be a teenage girl in the modern era. And, focusing on what is or isn't about Taylor Swift is really taking away from the artistic gains that Olivia has made, and I think it's unfair. And do you know who that conversation really benefits? Taylor Swift. Distracting from the fact that Olivia is, a talented and rising star, and instead just referring to her as a copycat or kind of distracting away from the quality and the excellence of her work, that kind of, helps the people that maybe are not invested in seeing her succeed. So I skipped the Grudge in my Guts reaction video by accident, and I'm so glad that I did, because I think that, on a first glance, just reading the lyrics, you might be like, ooh, this sounds like, from my interpretation of what's happened behind the scenes, this sounds like it could be about her. But I think that all of Guts is about relationships, and I think that Sour was pretty much all about relationships as well, and I think that that is a lot of the times the mode from which Olivia is operating as a songwriter, and I am just not convinced that the Grudge is actually about Taylor, because I think a song is a composite sketch. Is it possible that there could be a line here, a line there in all these different songs that maybe come from a feeling that she felt when she was going through whatever she was going through with Taylor? Sure. But I'm just not convinced that anything on this record is about that, because it is so layered and so rich and so intricate and so clearly about being 19 years old and, dating someone older and not knowing how to handle that, the consequences of doing that. So, I mean, the lyrics are the arguments that I've won against you in my head, in the shower, in the car, and in the mirror before bed. I'm so tough when I'm alone. I make you feel so guilty, and I fantasize about a time when you're sorry. And I think this is the part where people are really like, wow, this is about Taylor. Do you think I deserved it all? Oh, your flowers filled with vitriol. You built me up to watch me fall. You have everything and you still want more. I don't think that's about Taylor, but I actually think that those lines, kind of reflect a truth about this, which is that I don't understand why there is a tension or there's a hostility. I understand it from a practical and a business perspective, but from, just being an observer of seeing how, unbreakable and big the Taylor Swift brand is at this point, I don't see the harm in giving someone the flowers that they deserve without any strings attached. I would love to see the two of them prove everyone wrong and just interact at the VMAs. I would love to see Taylor post something about Guts. I don't think that's ever going to happen, but if it did, I would be very happy. And, I hope that we can keep it cute in the comment section below, because if you are a delusional and deranged stan, this is not the channel for you. This is not the place to come. This is where we have nuanced, critical conversations. And if you're not interested in that, that's fine, but go somewhere else. It's not for you. That's all I have for you in this video. I hope that you'll subscribe so that you can see me again next week. I will probably be releasing a very highly anticipated video essay about neither of the two artists that are mentioned in this video, so stay tuned to find out what that is. I will have all of my social medias linked down below. Come check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Swiftologist, and listen to the podcast The Evolution of a Snake if you like these kind of unfiltered, raw, constructive, analytical conversations. And I will see you in my next video. Goodbye, Swifties.